Hello everyone and welcome to my new YouTube channel, Magical History Tour. We're going to talk a lot about history and culture on this channel, with my plan being to upload once a week. I have a particular fascination for US politics, government, and presidents. If you like what you see here and you like those topics, give this video a like and think about subscribing. So today's video is going to be about presidents. Specifically, we're going to discuss 25 facts about US presidents to mess with your perception of time. So without further ado, let's get started. Number 1. There are people who lived during every assassination of an American president, from Abraham Lincoln in 1865 to John F. Kennedy in 1963. In fact, there are a select few that I'd venture to say perhaps have a living memory of all 4 presidential assassinations, such as Kitty Harvey, who we can tell from the Gerontology Wikipedia was born in 1860, so 5 years before Lincoln was shot, and died in 1972, so about a decade after JFK was shot. There very well may be people who remember every single presidential assassination. Number 2, the man who spoke about Lincoln's assassination on live TV. This man is Samuel J. Seymour, who was about 5 years old when the assassination happened. He would live to be 96 years old and spoke on the TV program I Have a Secret about his secret. Take a listen.
If you'll whisper your secret to me, I'm sure the folks at home would like to know what it is. Seymour was 5 years old at the time. He had been taken to Ford's Theater by some good friends, and the curious thing was that when he was this youth, 5 years of age, when he saw Booth jump from the box to the stage, at which time he broke his leg, his only concern was not for the president, because he didn't realize that the president had been shot, but the poor man who fell out of the balcony. And that's all of his memory is, of going to the theater and seeing a man fall out of the balcony.
Number 3, John Tyler, our 10th president, who was born in 1790, still has a living grandson. His name is Harrison Rufin Tyler, and he is still kicking at 95 years old. Here's the story of how that's even possible.
President John Tyler was 63 when his son Lyon was born in 1853. Lyon ended up marrying a much younger woman and fathered children well into his 70s. That included a son, Harrison, who was born in 1928 and is still alive today. In fact, he celebrated his 93rd birthday just this month. And another one of John Tyler's grandsons, Lyon Tyler Jr., died just last year at the age of 95. So yes, John Tyler, who was born during George Washington's presidency, does indeed still have a living grandson.
Number 4, our current president Joe Biden was born closer to Lincoln's inauguration in 1865 than his own inauguration in 2021. For you see, 1942, when Biden was born, was 77 years before 1865, whereas his inauguration in 2021 was 79 years after when Joe Biden was born in 1942. So do the math there. Number 5, Harriet Tubman, who famously helped lead the Underground Railroad, was born when our 3rd president, Thomas Jefferson, was alive in 1822. She died when our 40th president, Ronald Reagan, was alive in 1913. What a remarkable and long life that she lived. Number 6, John Quincy Adams is the only U.S. president and probably one of the only people to meet both George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. He was a young man meeting Washington and an elderly member of Congress when he served with a young Lincoln. Number 7, Richard Nixon personally knew presidents from Dwight Eisenhower, whom he served as vice president under in the 1950s, to our current president Joe Biden. He had a telephone call comforting Biden right after he was elected to the Senate in 1972, as he had family members tragically die in a car accident right around that time. Take a listen to what the call sounded like.
Could you get the new senator from Delaware, Mr. Biden, on the phone, please?
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. President. How are you? Senator, I know this is a very tragic day for you, but I wanted you to know that all of us here at the White House were thinking about you and praying for you and also also for your two children. And appreciate that very much. We know that I understand you were on the Hill at the time, and your wife was just driving by herself. Yes, that's so.
Number 8, our current era of U.S. presidents, so from 1789 to 2024, has been lived in its entirety by 3 men who have served as president. Our 8th president, Martin Van Buren, our 27th president, William Howard Taft, and our 39th president, Jimmy Carter. Number 9, our 32nd president, Herbert Hoover, died on October 20th, 1964, which was the exact same day Kamala Harris was born. Well, that might be more of just a coincidence than time perception, but it's still pretty interesting. Number 10, by dying in 1964, Herbert Hoover, who was president in 1929, outlived JFK. Number 11, speaking of 1929, that was the year both Anne Frank and Martin Luther King Jr. were born. That in itself kind of messes with your perception of time, and then you realize that Jimmy Carter, who was still alive, was born 5 years before both of them. Number 12, Barack Obama was born in Hawaii right after it became a state, and this means he's the only president in U.S. history where the flag didn't change from when he was born to when he served as president, and it may very well stay this way until at least 2029. Number 13, there are voice recordings made of presidents, namely the 23rd President Benjamin Harrison and 25th President William McKinley, that predate anyone being alive right now. That is kind of spooky. Here is a remastering of the oldest recording of an American president made by Benjamin Harrison in 1889.
As President of the United States, I was present at the first American Congress in Washington, D.C. I believe that with God's help, our two countries shall continue to live side by side in peace and prosperity. Benjamin Harrison.
Number 14. Famously, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson both died on the 4th of July, 1826, 50 years after the original Independence Day. We all know that's one of history's greatest coincidences. But James Monroe died on the 4th of July, 1831, exactly 55 years after the original Independence Day. And as an added bonus, Calvin Coolidge, our 30th president, was born on July 4th, 1872. Number 15, Gerald Ford was a president with an impressive lifespan. My mom actually met Gerald Ford. He died in 2006 at age 93. That means he was born a year before World War I started and died a year after this platform YouTube was invented. Number 16, Harry Truman was another president who had a very impressive lifespan. He was born in 1884 when the US flag basically looked like this. It only had 38 states, but he would die 3 years after man had landed on the moon in 1972. Number 17, Andrew Jackson famously killed a man in a duel, but he was also wounded in the fight. He carried a bullet wound close to his heart for the rest of his life, as it was too dangerous to remove. Ultimately, he lived another 39 years, dying at age 78. So, he spent roughly half of his life with a bullet in him. Number 18, as recently as 2018, there was someone who was alive who could have said, "My father met Lincoln." William H. Upham, who lived from 1841 to 1924, met Lincoln in 1862. He would later go on to serve as governor of Wisconsin and have some children rather later in life. His son died in 2018 at age 97. So 6 years ago, someone could have realistically claimed, "My father met Abraham Lincoln." Number 19, a vice presidential fun fact. Our longest living Veep was John Nance Gar, who served under FDR. He was born in 1868 when Andrew Johnson was president, and he died at 98 in 1967 when Lyndon Johnson was president. It's only fitting that he too was a Southern Democrat. Number 20, George Washington died in 1799, and the first dinosaur fossil was found in 1824. So Washington never knew dinosaurs existed. He was the only president who realistically could have never gotten to know. I wonder if Adams and Jefferson found out. Number 21. Remember when I mentioned an Eisenhower to Biden gap for Nixon? Well, singer Brenda Lee has a similar story. Her first number one hit was in 1960 when Eisenhower was president. And because of the way charts work now, her 1958 classic song Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree became a number one hit just last year, of course when Biden was president. So good for Little Miss Dynamite, she has a 63-year gap between number one hits. Number 22. This list has mostly been about how time passes and there's a lot of gaps between time. This is one how time is really slow. Here are a couple things that lasted longer than the William Henry Harrison presidency. Kim Kardashian's marriage to Chris Humphries, which was 72 days, and of course the recent premiership of Liz Truss, which was 49 days. Number 23. I'm sure you've all heard of the famous children's book author Dr. Seuss. He published his first book under the presidency of FDR in 1937, with that being And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street, and his last book was published all the way in 1990 under the presidency of George H.W. Bush, with that book being Oh, the Places You'll Go. At number 24, as impressive a time career gap as Dr. Seuss had, famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright kind of one-ups him here. His first house design was made in 1889 during the Benjamin Harrison presidency. His last design, the Norman Likes home, was completed in 1968 during LBJ's presidency. Now, this was completed posthumously, but still, Frank Lloyd Wright had a very long career. Number 25, our last one. John McCain, who died at age 81, was outlived by his mother, Roberta. Okay, since McCain wasn't a president, here's one for you. McCain's mother lived from President Taft to President Trump, and very nearly made it to President Biden, might I add. So what are your thoughts on these facts that may mess with your perception of time? Do you have a fact about presidents that may mess with your perception of time? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I will see you for the next video. Bye-bye.